What if I told you that every World Fair in history wasn't what they told us it was? That it wasn't about celebrating progress or showing off inventions, but that it was actually a weapon? Would you believe me if I said the World Fairs were used to infect millions of people with sickness? That they were used to sell clone babies to repopulate the world after resets? Why do you think every fair ended with sickness spreading across the land? Why do you think pandemics seem to appear right after these massive gatherings? Do you really believe that's just coincidence, or do you think it was planned? Think about the Chicago World Fair of 1893. We're told it was built in under 2 years, with hundreds of massive buildings, domes, towers, columns, statues, fountains, all glowing with electric light, before most people in America even had electricity in their homes. Do you honestly believe they built that in 2 years? Or is it more likely that those were Tartarian buildings that already existed? Why did they call it the White City and then demolish it all almost immediately after? Why destroy it if it was such an incredible achievement? Could it be because they needed to erase Tartarian architecture from history? And why gather millions of people into one concentrated area? Was it really to celebrate technology, or was it the perfect opportunity to unleash sickness, to spread bioweapons through crowds that had no idea they were being used as test subjects? Why do you think outbreaks of strange diseases always seem to follow these events? The Spanish flu of 1918 supposedly came from soldiers returning home after the war. That's what they tell us. But why did it spread right after the San Francisco World's Fair of 1915, which attracted millions of people? Why did sickness break out almost immediately afterwards? Does it not look like the same pattern over and over again? Gather people at a fair, infect them, then rewrite history to cover the tracks? And what about the baby incubator exhibits? Why were world fairs obsessed with displaying rows of babies in glass boxes? Why would you charge the public money to look at so-called premature babies like they were zoo animals? Doesn't that sound insane when you think about it? Or does it sound more like they were actually cloned babies, manufactured to replace the populations wiped out by sickness after each reset? Who pays to stare at sick babies? But people paid to see them because they didn't know the truth. They were being shown the future, rows of cloned babies ready to be sold to new families, to fill cities stripped of their original inhabitants. Do you think all those babies survived? Do you think they were healthy, or were they intentionally engineered with weak immune systems, seeded with hidden diseases, so that these new populations would never live as long or as strong as the Tartarians did? Why do you think lifespans dropped so suddenly in the so-called modern age? Why do mainstream historians tell us people only lived into their 40s in the 1800s, when records from Tartarian times show people living for centuries? Who benefits from us dying young? If people lived long lives, they'd pass down knowledge, they'd remember the resets, they'd know the truth about free energy and natural healing. So what had to happen? The system had to design sickness into us from birth. They had to weaken us so we'd never grow strong enough to rebel, never strong enough to see through their lies. Isn't it obvious now? And the food system is the biggest scam of all. Why is it that every supermarket today is filled with chemicals disguised as food? Why do they push sugar, seed oils, processed junk, fake lab meat, while telling us to avoid red meat and animal fats? Why do they tell us bugs are the future of food? Why do they say meat is bad when every strong civilization in history thrived on it? Could it be because meat makes you strong, while their food makes you sick and weak? Could it be that the real control mechanism is what you eat every day? Look back through history. Why did the Black Death supposedly appear right after Europe was filled with Tartarian cathedrals? Why did cholera spread at the exact same time cities were being gutted and Tartarian infrastructure was demolished? Why do plagues and pandemics always seem to appear when the old world is being erased? Do you think that's chance? Or is it by design? And tell me this, why is it that every so-called pandemic we see today follows the exact same formula as back then? Mass gathering, mass sickness, mass fear, mass control. Isn't it the same script being repeated? Do you think governments are obsessed with vaccines because they care about your health or because they want to maintain the same cycle? Why are we being told to eat fake food, live indoors, avoid the sun, and trust the system? Who benefits when humans are sick, weak, and obedient? The World Fairs were never celebrations. They were cover-ups, weapons, population control events, and slave-making machines. They infected people, sold cloned babies, and demolished Tartarian cities under the cover of entertainment. And we still live under that system today. Don't you see it? But here's the question. Can you step out of it? Can you grow your own food? Can you eat real meat? Can you reject the system's poison and become strong like our Tartarian ancestors? Or will you keep eating their fake food, keep trusting their fake history, keep believing their fake science, and stay a slave? The ruins of Tartaria are still all around us. The cathedrals, the domes, The old government buildings, the train stations, the lighthouses, the bridges. Why do you think they look nothing like what we build today? Why do you think they're made of materials and designs we supposedly didn't have the technology to create? Why do you think most of them are repurposed into museums, banks, and government buildings? Isn't it because they were never built by our civilization, but inherited from a greater one? And why do you think the system spends billions to destroy, hide, or disguise them? Why do you think they've been converting them into prisons, courthouses, and offices, stripping the domes and towers, erasing the evidence of free energy? If these buildings were just relics of the past, why not preserve them? Why not honor them? Why are they always destroyed? Could it be because they reveal the lie of history itself? So ask yourself, if the world fairs were really about progress, why did they end with sickness, pandemics, and mass demolitions? Why were cloned babies sold like products? Why are we told lifespans collapsed just as modern medicine appeared? Why does food that keeps us sick dominate every store shelf? Why is real food demonized while poison is celebrated? Why do they always repeat the same tricks? And most importantly, why do so few people question it? The truth is simple. The world fairs were part of the reset system. They infected the people. They sold the clones. They tore down Tartaria. And they trapped us in a cycle of sickness and slavery. The only way out is to stop believing the lies, to take back your health, your food, your strength, and your mind. So what do you think? Were the world fairs really celebrations of human progress? Or were they weapons of mass control? Were those incubator babies really premature? Or were they cloned children sold to repopulate a reset world? Did pandemics really come from chance? Or were they engineered? Why were Tartarian buildings destroyed instead of preserved? And what are you going to do now that you know the truth? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it.